Anthony Scaramucci is now Donald Trump's new communications director. And in this video, we're gonna break down some of the highlights of how he has communicated over the past few years, starting with this video.
I tell you about the president, he's the most competitive person I've ever met. Okay, I've seen this guy throw another hack.
Moving around papers?
I'm moving around paper right now, Maria, but that's another hack politician.
You call Donald Trump a hack?
He's a hack politician. He's probably going to make Elizabeth Warren his vice presidential nominee with comments like that.
Do you think he's a
It's anti-American. It's very, very divisive.
You think Donald's a plant?
And I'll tell you who he's going to be president of. You can tell Donald I said this, the Queens County Bullies Association. You got to cut it out now and stop all this crazy rhetoric spinning everybody's heads around.
I like how you say that now, but I've had a problem with the way he talked about women for years. And now
By the way,
I don't like the way he talks about women. I don't like the way he talks about our friend Megyn Kelly. And you know what? The politicians don't want to go at Trump because he's got a big mouth and he's afraid he's going to light him up on Fox News and all these other places. But I'm not a politician. Bring it.
Right, so why is he resonating?
You're an inherited money dude from Queens County. Bring it, Donald.
You're close to Walker, right?
Okay.
Do you think
You're
Walker
an inherited money dude from Queens County. I think the hedge fund community is right out of Elizabeth Warren's playbook. Are you a Democratic plant for Hillary Clinton and Elizabeth Warren?
I've been saying that for a long time.
That's what we want to know. Stand here and prove otherwise.
Calling
Classes is right out of the Obama, Warren, Hillary Clinton playbook.
He has.
Let's show the evidence to the American people.
Give him
he is a class divider.
Give him some credit. Donald Trump has reduced Jeb Bush, Scott Walker, and Marco Rubio almost to irrelevance.
For now. No.
Their internal polls are showing that before their internal polling showed that his 25% was only 15.
I'm hearing rap in my ear, but I really don't want to rap. Okay, this nonsense is going to end, and I predict it'll end before Thanksgiving.
All right, there you go. Anthony Scaramucci on the record about Donald Trump.
So unfortunately, he wasn't right in that last part. By the way, have there ever been two people on a panel who wanted to talk to each other less? Or at least one way. He was not having that guy that kept interrupting him over and over.
Yeah, you should have been here.
That was that guy going, I said that too. I predicted that. It's like
there were days for me and Cenk in 2004, 2005, trust me.
But that was pretty brutal.
That was pretty brutal. This is, but I mean,
I'm gonna have some tweets in just a second.
Yeah, you should. But I mean, Scaramucci, I mean, a guy, again, I'm sure a very smart guy. I mean, first of all, he got fired at not at Lehman Brothers, but at where's everyone at
now or then?
Yeah, now. Trump's entire cabinet
is Goldman Sachs.
Goldman Sachs. So he got hired at Goldman Sachs, got fired and rehired at Goldman Sachs.
Yeah.
Because he's clearly impressive.
I didn't know that he was fired. I knew that he was
hired back. Wow. Right? And then he broke off and then he started a fund that advised other funds or that invested with other funds. I mean, he's thinking, and so he's a smarter guy, I suspect, than most people in that administration. But this is a guy who, by the way, just compared the playbook, the Obama, Warren, Hillary Clinton playbook on Wall Street. Well, I mean, those three people couldn't be farther apart on Wall Street. I mean, Obama probably somewhere in between Warren and Hillary Clinton, but they're not. Those three people are not operating on the same playbook. And in 2010, at the town hall, because he went to law school with Obama at Harvard, he asked Obama at a town hall, so first question, when are we going to stop whacking at the Wall Street pinata? He asked Obama.
I might even remember that.
So the notion that, right, because in their minds, the biggest problem with Barack Obama, too tough on Wall Street.
I know,
too tough.
Craziness.
Right. And now
I felt that.
Right, yeah, totally. Clearly too tough on Wall Street because of, no one went to prison. Now that was the Justice Department, but again, if Obama had said, hey man, let's go. Right now, there are a lot of reasons, complicated reasons about why prosecutors got so timid with prosecuting people on Wall Street. Interesting book out now on that, or coming out soon. David Sirota had the guy on, but nonetheless, they didn't do anything, right? And the notion that Dodd-Frank was
too tough,
whacking at the Wall Street pinata. So again, if you think that Donald Trump is gonna come in and get tough and defend your rights against the rights of Wall Street, you're out of your effing mind. It's guys like this. I mean, we already knew that. He's already got an entire staff.
I love that in that metaphor, Wall Street's a pinata, which is like a shallow object that's been stuffed full of stuff it never earned. And that's his analogy. That's sort of weird. But okay, that video was good, but there's other stuff as well that will soon be papered over. In fact, many of these tweets have since been deleted. But he tweeted, we the USA have 5% of the world's population, but 50% of the world's guns. Enough is enough. It is just common sense to apply more controls.
I bet he doesn't delete any of them.
Oh, he already has deleted
already
some.
deleted
Yeah.
I bet he deletes those.
I really like this next one. Let's see. Walls don't work, never have, never will. The Berlin Wall, don't fall for it. Well, we'll see if he falls for
I
it.
want to point out that wall worked for 28 years.
That's a good point, yeah.
It would have been a bad idea.
Bad example.
Next up, he said this, if Hillary keeps us up, she might be back in play for 2016. I hope she runs, she's incredibly competent.
Ooh.
Interesting.
That one
okay.
hurt. Yeah. By the way, he raised money for Obama in 2008,
Yes.
then for Romney in 12.
Yeah. He said, you can take steps to combat climate change without crippling the economy. The fact many people still believe climate change is a hoax is disheartening. Except when my boss does it, I don't really mind that so much.
Has that been deleted?
I don't know if that one was, but also he had an interesting evolution on climate change, as people do as they get older. At one point he said that climate science is indisputable, and then he later went on to say, well, I'm not a scientist, and he evolved between June and December of last year.
Sure.
For those two positions. And but here's the thing, look, we understand that, I guess it's maybe to Trump's credit that he brings in people that once criticized him, maybe. But it's the fakeness, and it's the fact that, like you said, it's the paid perjurer. Like, he's gonna go up and in just his first day, Scaramucci said this, asked by a reporter if he stands by Trump's claim that 3 to 5 million illegal votes cost him the popular vote. Scaramucci said, if the president says it, my guess is that there is probably some level of truth to that. And he changed his position on climate change, and he'll change his position on guns. And he once spoke very critically of the way Donald Trump spoke about Islam and tried to portray it as a religion of violence. But all of that, all of what makes a person the person they are, the values that they have, just go out the door as soon as you're standing at that podium. And that's one of the things that people hate about politics that supposedly Donald Trump was going to change. But we're now seeing just another iteration of it.
Yeah, I mean, they wanted this position of power. He wanted 3 positions in the administration. He obviously he doesn't need the money. He doesn't need the money that he would make from having this position. He's rich beyond anyone's wildest dreams.
Of course, you could have said it about Trump, but it's
right.
He wants
So
to.
no, he wants it because they want he wants power. I mean, but if Scaramucci, given those things, I mean, if he'd said the Democrats are a dead party and they're too tough on Wall Street, Scaramucci could have said, yeah, I'm throwing my support behind John Kasich and I hope he runs and I'll do anything to help John Kasich run. That would be fairly principled.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
He's checked all his principles at the door on this one, and you've already seen a total reversal, as John has just pointed out. It's the worst of us, It's just politics for politics' sake, and maybe they get their head to some place where they go, well, it's about other stuff. It's about the Supreme Court. It's about some sort of modest legislative achievement. I don't know how they get their heads around it. It's despicable.
Nichols,
it's the worst of us.
John Nichols, back in that Nation piece, which is worth reading, said about Sean Spicer that Spicer aided and abetted the worst of Donald Trump, and that's if you're in charge of the messaging. That's what you're likely to have to do.
Let's play one more clip, just because I think it'll be fun. So if you believe that Anthony Scaramucci now as the communications director for Trump might occasionally tell the truth in a way we haven't gotten in the past, I want you to listen to this clip from today when asked if Donald Trump is feeling under siege.
I tell you about the president, he's the most competitive person I've ever met. Okay, I've seen this guy throw a dead spiral through a tire. I've seen him at Madison Square Garden with a top coat on. He's standing in the key and he's hitting foul shots and swishing them, okay? He sinks 3-foot putts. I don't see this guy as a guy that's ever under siege. This is a very, very competitive person. Obviously, there's a lot of incoming that comes into the White House, but the president's a winner, okay? And what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a lot of winning.
So see that guy who hit that half-court shot in a full top coat and gave him a $50,000 check? That's how. Because I wonder how he got his money.
That's what got him started, not his dad.
Yeah, he really should have worn stuff under the coat. So there.
That's what I'm looking for in a president, by the way, a guy who can really throw a spiral.
Spiral through a tire. By the way, a number of people on Twitter who were like, what does that mean?
Yeah, well, that's what I love is that he's trying to portray this guy who obviously is incredibly lazy. We all understand that. He's the low energy guy as this sports hero. But even I'm not huge on sports, like listening to his examples, he said he threw a spiral through a tire. He didn't say from how far away. He didn't say how many tries he got. He hit free throws.
Right.
Okay, and he hit a 3-foot putt? Yeah. How much shorter could a putt be than 3 feet? I think he might have actually been insulting him in that video.
That's funny. Kim Jong-il shot a 38 under par 34. Great leaders do good sports. There's no question.
The one thing I did figure out is Steph Curry, Tom Brady for president, apparently. If you can throw a spiral and hit a free throw, then we should elect you, apparently.
Calvin Murphy. That guy can
makes no sense. That's the logic.
For a guy who can work to the hoop.
President Rick Barry. Right, I love that. Like they didn't say how far we're gonna put like right the tires here. Yeah, we're gonna throw.
I once saw him hit a ball right off a tee. It was beautiful.
By the way,
that's Donald
he's got
Trump.
that same macho bullshit that Trump has, and that's how they bond. One way they bond. Yeah. They also bond over big money. And clearly, they bond over not really caring caring about anything that matters to this country.
Scaramucci criticized members of Congress because they were guys who didn't have any real money. Right? This is again, we have an elite, out of touch government under the best of circumstances, but we found a way to make it considerably worse.
Yeah.
And that matters. Bottom line on Scaramucci is guys with good hair who graduated from Tufts University shouldn't be trusted.
That's a new rule here from TYT.
TYT membership gets you commercial-free Young Turks. Download it, stream it, podcast it, get all the network shows, and support independent media. TYTnetwork.com/join.